back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. In this hour, we're going to be speaking to Richard Dolan about AD, after disclosure. But before we bring Richard on, let me remind you that Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And please do check out the Just Energy Radio webpage where you, one, can sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep you informed of the excellent programming like we have on today that's coming up, as well as you can check out our over 5 years' worth of archives. And don't forget, we've started putting all of the Just Energy Radio archives out on YouTube so you can start streaming this content over your phone, over your TV set. How cool is that? Or anywhere you are. YouTube, it's a Just Energy Radio channel. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Richard and bring him on the air. Richard Dolan is considered by many students of the UFO phenomena to be the preeminent historian of the subject. Richard's writing is widely seen as ufology's gold standard. His seminal history, UFO and the National Security State, has inspired such statements as The Best History Ever Written About UFOs by best-selling author Whitley Strieber and Masterful and Important by Dr. Edgar Mitchell of Apollo 14. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio the author of the new book, AD, After Disclosure, When the Government Finally Reveals the Truth About Alien Contact, Richard Dolan. Hey, Richard, how are you?
Well, hello, Rita. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've loved it every time.
Well, I was like, oh, my God, he has a new book out. Wait, when can I get him on?
Well, yeah.
Because you're just a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you so much. And that particular book, which I had the pleasure to co-author with a gentleman named Bryce Zabel, was a real adventure for us both to write, I have to say.
Well, it just seems like kind of a departure for you, going from being a historian to writing something that was so speculative as to what might happen if disclosure was made. What made you decide to kind of go down that road?
Yeah, I had written about the past. I'm a historian by training. That's what I've always been best at doing, I think, and I go from writing about history to writing about the future, as in a sense. But nonetheless, the project really is, it's very much a continuation and a reflection of my interests. It's not really as great a departure as you might think at first. Really, the way it came about was that, you know, when you write about the UFO reality, and you write, as I do, in a very political tone about the cover-up, because that's really always where I've been coming at this from. It's a very politically oriented study of ufology, so I write about the cover-up, what I believe is a cover-up of information. And so inevitably over those years you start to ask yourself, well, what happens if we ever end this cover-up? After all, a lot of people talk about it. The word disclosure has become very much sort of common currency in the UFO field over the past decade. So it's come up a lot, and over a period of years, actually, when I look back over many of my previous presentations, I can see now, in retrospect, that I was really groping toward this whole concept of what happens if, first of all, how might this secret ever end, because that's an important question, and then what happens if it ends. And I was lucky in the sense that I hooked up with a great co-author named Bryce Zabel. And for anyone who remembers the TV show Dark Skies from the late 1990s, well, that was Bryce. He created and produced that show. So he's a very, very experienced Hollywood screenwriter and producer. And what made him so great to work with for me was that he has a gift for just seeing people in situations, just the way you would think with a person who writes scripts for TV and movies. And so, you know, our collaboration gave this book a sense of immediacy that I really feel was a distinctive contribution that he brought to the game. But really what we try to do is just sit down like a think tank would and ask some fundamental questions, which would be, okay, granted that UFOs are a real phenomenon and granted that there is a cover-up, so A, how might this cover-up end? Like, will it end? Many people say, no, it will never end. It's been going on for years and years. Why would it ever end? Nevertheless, I feel that it will end. And then once it ends, what then? And what we really set out to do, I would say for the first time ever, was to look at a post-disclosure world in a way that's a little bit more than just the standard utopian kind of, oh, yeah, all of our problems will be solved and we'll have free energy and everything will be great. We don't go there. What we try to do is to see this in as realistic a way as we were able to do. Obviously not assuming that we've answered all the questions. Obviously, anytime you do predictions, you're going to get most of them wrong. But what we wanted to do wasn't to finish the conversation, but really to start a conversation, to get people to thinking about questions like this. Really practical questions. When there's a disclosure, what next? And that's really what we try to do, and that's why I describe it as a real adventure, because we were going into unknown territory with every chapter of that book. No one had handled these issues before, in my opinion.
One of the things that I really appreciated about the book was that, one, it asked a lot of questions. It's like, well, what if this happened? Okay, so if this, then what? And it followed different streams of consciousness and put out different scenarios. There are so many books out right now, in my opinion, that say, well, this is how it is, and this is how it's going to be, and forever and ever, Dominus Nabisco. And your book did not approach it that way. It just said, okay, well, if this is the road we're going down, what are the possibilities that could arise out of here? And then from these possibilities, what would happen? And that was something I just really, really appreciated.
Well, I'm glad. One of the biggest reasons we had to do that is because we ourselves don't truly know, of course, who these other beings are. I mean, that's really the big elephant in the living room, so to speak, is who are we dealing with? What are we dealing with? What is the ultimate answer behind the UFO mystery itself? I mean, we have some theories. I have some theories. Certainly, an extraterrestrial answer is a real possibility. In my own view, that does look like that's a big part of the answer. But is that all of it? The more you look into this phenomenon, the more you start to realize that our understanding of science isn't quite up to what's happening, because these beings have some ability to manipulate space and time, it seems to me. And does that mean, are they able to traverse dimensions in one way or another? Are they interdimensional creatures, as we would understand that? Or are they something else entirely? Are they artificial creations, artificially intelligent in some way, cybernetic organisms? Are they from the future? All of these questions we really tried to ask. And it's not that we know the answer, but depending on what the answers are, that might affect the outcome. And then even more important than what they are is what are their intentions. Basically, are they good, bad, or indifferent? And you get a lot of debate, a lot of disagreement among people who are connected to this field, of course. And what if there's more than one group with more than one agenda, which happens to be my own opinion? So it makes it a very complicated outcome when you finally get a disclosure of some sort, because if they're very hostile and if we can't do a thing about it, well, that's one problem. If they're very benign, well, that's another type of an outcome. And what if? And here's the thing that really got me, which is what I really think is the case. What if we get to a point in our own society where we will be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are here, but we will not yet be able to grab one and put them on a podium next to the president? So we'll be at this kind of in-between phase where, yes, we know it's real, but we're still going to disagree for years, maybe generations, about the nature of these beings. And I do think that will be the case. And there'll be all kinds of new political polarizations as a result of it. In other words, one of the things that we discovered in the course of writing this book is that disclosure can be a very messy and maybe for a long time a very unsatisfactory process. We keep thinking it's going to answer everything, but it may not be the end of anything. It's just going to be the beginning of a new phase, and maybe a new phase of conflict among human society, frankly. It's a possibility.
I mean, my feeling is, just talking in general about this topic and the government, I mean, short of them, stepping out of the craft and walking up to a bunch of people, caught on camera, talking, if the government discloses, but the only evidence is, the sightings in the sky, then they could just say, well, yeah, there are extraterrestrials, and just kind of leave it at that for forever, even though there might be a deeper level of connection. And, when you start getting into the underground bases and, all of the other stuff that's out there that people speculate on.
That's right. Let me walk through this basic scenario, because this is how I speculate it will go down. Now, first of all, you've got this big secret. You've got a phenomenon that I'm sure many of your listeners, your regular listeners, realize this is real. There is a reality to these sightings that is not explainable in our conventional reality. So let's call that's UFOs, and that's some version of other. That's what we say. I don't know if they're alien. They're other. They're not us. So you could say, well, there's been secrecy all these years. Why would the government ever reveal that secret now? And the fact is that there is no incentive. There's nothing to be gained by giving up a secret. But you see, this is where I think sometimes we forget the government or the secret keepers. They're not the only factor in the equation. You have these other beings. Let's not forget them. They may decide to out themselves at any time. But the real variable, frankly, in this equation is us, our society. We are transforming ourselves so rapidly, so dramatically, just in the last generation, last 20 years. Look where we have come as a society in our ability to communicate with each other globally via internet, web. Now there's Skype and YouTube and Facebook and all of these ways that we can just communicate, bam, instantly. It has dramatically transformed our world, and that's not stopping. We're obviously in the midst of this transformation. And that also includes things like artificial intelligence that your computer and mine will have probably in another 10, 20 years, where your computer will be able to talk to you. Whether it's actually conscious or not is another issue, but it may seem like it. And the point that I'm simply making here is that we are in a process here where in another 10, 20 years, I really believe with the technology alone, just the technology that we will have, I think that we will have more than sufficient tools to be able to force this issue out. Now, when we get to that point, whether it's through a mass sighting that's multiply recorded on many devices or some variant of the WikiLeaks or anonymous phenomenon in which information is forced out. And keep in mind, WikiLeaks is a recent development because it could not have existed more than 10 years ago because we didn't have the technological infrastructure for something like that. So in other words, all of this is dependent on our ongoing technological revolution. So I think something's going to happen to force this issue out. And when it does, the politicians around the world are going to have to scramble, especially in the U.S. The president, presumably, is going to be forced into a position where this has to come out. But that doesn't mean that the CIA and all the other agencies are just going to walk away from the table. They will continue to try to control spin. They will continue to try to control this because imagine a president goes out there and says, yes, it is after the massive sighting that everyone noticed over, let's say, Montreal, that lasted for 2 days, that was recorded. Yes, apparently some of these UFOs don't belong to us. Like, let's say he says that. So
it was the first time.
Yes. Well, so now you've got this admission. Yeah, right. See, the problem is they would have a very difficult time just, walking. He'll say, yes, some UFOs are ET. So what does he say then? Thanks very much, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. No, not really, because there's going to be a few follow-up questions here. Quite a few. I mean, from who are they and what do they want, and that may not be an easy thing to answer, by the way, because we may not have all the answers in the covert world to begin with. And what if some of those answers actually are frightening? You've got all these things to worry about. And then you've got the political blowback, because people will want to know, hey, wait a minute, you tell me UFOs are real after you lied about it for 60, 70 years? What's that say about our political situation, our academic community, our scientific world, our journalists? In other words, people are going to start exploring the ways in which their society has been manipulated, the ways in which they've been lied to. And then they're going to want to understand the structure of secrecy itself, black budgets, all of these things that are going to be very uncomfortable for the powers that be to have people look at. So it's going to be a political nightmare, and so there will be a continual attempt, I think, by political authorities to try to maintain control over this on behalf of the intelligence community. And really what we're going to see is a battle. I don't know who's going to win this battle, by the way, but it will be a battle between the forces of the people who will demand truth and will, just like we saw the Occupy Wall Street movement, or you saw millions of people in Egypt's Tahrir Square, well, you'll see millions of people trying to occupy Wright-Patterson Air Force Base or Area 51. It will happen. So that's one side of it. And on the other side, you'll see the forces of secrecy, which will continue to try to maintain control. And you'll have someone like the president stuck in the middle thinking, where do I go here? What side do I come down on? How much information should I give up? And again, these are issues that all of us as a society are going to have to work our way through. And where we come out, well, your guess is as good as mine. But I think these will be some of the issues that we'll be dealing with. And that's just the start of it.
When you talked about the political blowback, the UFO question is just one of 100, or more different cover-ups and conspiracy theories that fall into this bigger, vaster collection. And if, my feeling is that if the people find out that the government has been willingly, with knowledge, withholding this information and calling all these people liars for all these years, that it's going to bring into question all the other things, Kennedy, 9/11. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
I completely agree with you here. Now, that wasn't something that we explored in great detail in our book. We tried to keep it focused on the UFO issue, although I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember everything that I wrote in there and that we wrote. I'm pretty sure we did touch upon that question because it is an important question. But I will just say that I completely agree with it, because when you have this massively potent lie, really, it's what it is, that's gone for now at least 70 years, that has really, when you think about it, it's been a foundational aspect of our society. You turn on television, and the only place UFOs exist is in fiction, on television, on TV shows, but not on the news. Even when there's sightings, you don't really ever get the serious mainstream journalists actually to believe, for goodness sakes, that there are aliens here. I mean, they joke about it. They think it's a big funny thing. So the UFO denial has been a foundational part of our reality, of our consensus reality. And when that comes crashing down, you're darn right people will ask about 9/11. I mean, they already are, but they're going to ask more about 9/11 or underground bases and all those rumors of reverse-engineered ET technology, or things like chemtrails, or take your pick. There will be all of these issues that come up, and it will be harder and harder to contain them, where they're being contained now because they're fringe as far as mainstream goes. I think people will force them into the mainstream. And who knows where that will end up.
But there's a big difference between having a group of secrets. Building the U-2 spy plane was a secret. what's going on with the UFOs and other material like that is just a bunch of lies that are that are sitting on top of a secret, and I think that's the part that most people would feel so insulted about.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone is different, so I'm sure that there will be people who will say, well, the government did what they felt was best, and I accept it, and I'm cool with it, and they had lied for our own safety. But you know what? A lot of people will not feel that way. So there'll be many people who are going to be very upset. They will feel betrayed. Think about all the people who've had what appear to be abduction experiences. Like you, I know many such people, and not all of them are positive. Many of them are troubling. Some of them are actually deeply traumatic. And in all of these cases, these individuals, no matter what the nature of their experience, they know that they can't talk about it publicly without a loss of their reputation and ridicule. And they're going to be angry when they realize that there have been powerful people in the government who've known all along that this is real. And yet these people have gone through their life really suffering, often in silence. So no, they're not going to be happy. And you think there won't be class action lawsuits? That'll be one aspect. There'll be a lot of legal action that will be in the aftermath of this. And again, we're going to see a lot of our world turned just upside down. One of the things that a theory that I've been working on for the past couple of years is an idea that I call a breakaway civilization. And I do believe that this exists. I don't know 100% that it does, but I think it does. And the basic idea is it's like an extreme version of the classified world that we already know is the case, in which classified world's got certain technologies that are very, very much ahead of the mainstream world. Well, imagine within the classified world that they have something as exotic as ET technology to study. So certainly that's going to give them a real scientific head start on a lot of issues and some money-making opportunities. Maybe that helps them come up with high tensile fibers or fiber optics or lasers or what have you. But what if they make breakthroughs that are actually so good that they don't get shared with the rest of the world? Breakthroughs that might be, new sources of energy that would replace petroleum, for example, or better forms of transportation like electrogravitics, that is anti-gravity in one way or another. I could easily see that these breakthroughs would not be shared with the world, but that they would continue to be developed privately. And in a sense, what you would see is the classified world dealing with UFOs would, in fact, eventually develop their own fleet of flying saucers. As crazy as that might sound, I think that has happened. And in other words, that they've gone so far beyond the rest of us poor slobs technologically that they are in a totally different place, and they may not really even know how to share their knowledge with the rest of us. They've gone so far ahead. And it could very well be that technology has allowed them to have interactions with some of these beings, for all we know. We're giving them a totally different cosmology, a totally different understanding of their place in the universe. In a sense, qualifying them, in my view, as a separate civilization itself, one that is broken off from our own, hence a breakaway civilization. And I think, personally, that this is also part of the equation here. And so, if I'm right on this, when there's disclosure, people are just not going to roll over and say, oh, whatever you say, government. They're going to be investigating this, too. And I think that this will be discovered, that there is this extremely advanced classified world. And, again, just another thing to confuse matters, because I think what will be seen is that this classified breakaway civilization has developed a great deal of independence from formal political authority. Just like everything else in this world has become privatized, so too this. And we're going to have a reckoning. On the one hand, I'm not even talking about dealing with these other beings yet. I'm just saying in our own society, disclosure is going to force a reckoning of all of these types of illegalities and developments that are really against openness and against democratic governance. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a showdown. Will it be, like think of the Arab Spring? How will it end up, on the side of the people or on the side of the established authorities? Well, so far in the Arab Spring, the established authorities have gotten the upper hand easily. Will that be the case with disclosure also? I don't know, but I think that's going to be an issue.
But that breakaway group, they're loosely connected to government. I guess they're connected to government, but they're not government that we see in the traditional sense unless they become, I hate saying this out loud, but it just wants to come out of my lips, the new government.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Well, I think what's happened, I encourage people sometimes just to forget UFOs for a minute and just look at the known political world that we have around us and all of the top political analyses that's out there now. I think everyone recognizes that presidents and prime ministers and all these national leaders, they're not really elected so much as selected. And they're selected by powerful private financial interests, whether it's Barack Obama or before him George W. Bush or, David Cameron in the UK or, in France or in Russia. You've got powerful money running the show, or in China. It's all the same. And so when we talk about nation states, I think what we're really doing is we're looking at obsolete concepts anyway. So we need to have a new and a fresh understanding of our politics. One of the things that's absolutely the case with American politics is that we have an intelligent, black budget community that is out of control. And again, I'm not even getting into UFOs yet, but just in the regular formulations of it. The Washington Post 2 years ago, they're as mainstream as you get, they did an extended study on the American intelligence community and said, yes, it's out of control, people. We don't know how much money they get. We don't know how many people it employs. And we certainly don't think it's making our country much safer or any safer. So we have an out-of-control situation in which black budget special access programs really have no oversight. Now you bring in the UFO phenomenon in. All of the leaks, all of the analyses, everything that we've been able to glean and learn about the classified nature of the UFO reality is that this, too, is privatized. This, too, has a center of power that is, in fact, beyond the control of the president, just like so much else of the black budget community. The president can't control this. He's not able to. The president's got to kiss the babies. He's got to shake the hands. He's got to get reelected. He's got to raise money. How is a president going to manage the thousands, literally thousands, of special access programs that aren't supposed to exist, but yet they do? He gave a little bit of time in a day. So these things have gone beyond government control, and they're dominated by private contractors, and that is how.
But add another little twist to that, Richard. If they are owned by private contractors, then if this whole thing comes out, then we as the people cannot say, well, we the people own this because it's part of the government. And so it gives us absolutely nothing.
Right. That's right.
Is it?
And privatization, you see, this really helps with secrecy. This is something that's important for us all to understand. The UFO secret isn't so much classified any longer as it is proprietary. And that makes it really impervious in many ways to like freedom of information requests. Because you don't have to get one from Lockheed. Lockheed's a private company, and what they have would be trade secrets and proprietary information. And that's where a lot of this has gone. Let me go back 60 years. We've picked up some piece of Roswell technology. Let's say I'm the Air Force and you're General Electric, and we're buddies. And I got this ET technology. Well, at some point I'm probably going to give it to your company because you've got the engineers, you've got the people who can study it and replicate it. And here's the question: who then owns it? Probably our lawyers overtly would hammer out some agreement, but very likely, maybe General Electric would. And then after I retire from my position, I get hired as a senior VP. I can get in on the action too, make some money. That's really how it is. All the power is privatized beyond government. And so we'll have to find a way to get back control. This is a big part of my motivation in writing this book, is that once there's a disclosure, once we lift up the carpet and we see this filth of a black budget, a runaway black budget system that's absolutely beyond public control in every meaningful way, then my hope would be that people would get angry enough that they would say, hey, you know what, this is my country, and this is important, and we need to have public responsiveness to this, and let's have our own government, which we elect, in theory, get back in control of this in the name of the people, rather than have private entities dominate this secret, which they've done now for, I think, quite some time.
I was going to ask the question, what benefit would there be from making a disclosure? But it seems like having disclosure happen, especially if it takes kind of the shape and form that you've just been describing with all this privatization and all of this stuff established already, that, the choice would be either people would have to just accept that they are on the losing end of this whole agreement, or they would have to stand up and really fight for their rights and fight for what they want, which would be kind of not fun. I don't know how to say it. It wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, I think you've really sized it up very well with that statement, because disclosure is not going to be a fun process. See, this is my own conclusion. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have it. Ultimately, I don't really think that we have much say in the matter. When I mean we, I mean like all of civilization, because we're on the disclosure train, you see, and it's just going. We don't really. It's not like we can stop improving our computers. It's not like we can stop evolving our social infrastructure. That's just going. And disclosure, whether we are ready for it or not, is going to happen. No couple is ever ready to have their first child. No one is ready. I can tell you that personally. But you have it anyway. And then you have to learn on the fly, and I think disclosure is going to be like that. We will never, ever be ready for this. Never. But it will happen. There's going to be a tremendous shock. There's going to be a lot of unhappy people arguing over what to do. You'll have, and then there's the religious aspect. You will have fundamentalist Christians who will have a very definite take on this. And that take will be that these entities are demonic. They're not ET. That's deception. That's Luciferian. So that's one. Then you'll have the other side of it. You'll have a lot of, tree-hugging, pyramid hat-wearing New Agers. I say that out of love. I mean, I've got a lot of close friends like that. But they're going to be
standing under the beam going, pick me up.
Exactly. And guess what? There's no bridge long enough to cover that gap. So you're going to have two antipodes of perspectives here, and they're just not ever going to resolve. The only thing that will resolve that is time, a lot of time, and probably, realistically, new generations. Because I don't know how much people will change, but their children and their grandchildren, that's where change comes from. So it's going to be a very messy, argumentative period. It'll also be very exciting in a lot of ways. One thing Bryce and I thought is that you'll see like a replay of the 1960s, of course with high tech and, internet and everything. But if you think back at the 60s, you have the thing that was started, really spurred by a great shock, let's say the JFK assassination, and was exacerbated by things like the Vietnam War and civil rights, where you've got this massive social argument, the old against the new, and young people seeing a new way to look at their reality. I think the world of AD will be very much like this, where a lot of people are going to say, holy smokes, you guys have lied and lied and lied for generations. You know what? We're out, man. We're not part of your culture of BS. We're going to create something new. and many of them will do it explicitly in line with, like an alliance with these other beings, undoubtedly. There'll be a lot of hallucinogenics that are going to work their way in, whether it's DMT or ayahuasca, that, many of which will be said, but will tune you into these entities. It's already a very widespread belief in the subculture of UFOs. It'll become more widespread. In a lot of ways, then, there'll be that kind of recalling of the 1960s, I think. But again, all with new twists. And where this will all end up, who knows? But it
seems like it would give us the opportunity to reset our culture, maybe get some of the dirt out of
God,
government.
I hope so. Yes, I mean, I really, for all of the difficulties, I remain kind of optimistic, a little more optimistic than pessimistic, that this will be a good thing. Because when you look at our world, I think anyone with a brain in their head who looks around the world realizes that what we have is very quickly becoming not sustainable, whether we're talking politically or economically, financially, environmentally, spiritually. What passes for mass entertainment is just, in my opinion, I think it's mind-numbing, brain-siphoning, soul-sucking, types of ideas that can't possibly be good for us in the long run. And something like, I think it would have to take a shock as great as disclosure to wake people up. Here's one thing that I think could happen. We learn that there are these other beings, and let's say that, as it appears, they're highly intelligent, they're intensely telepathic. They've got a way of dealing with reality that we have not even begun to fathom. Well, guess what? I think that there will be many people who will stop and take a look at their lives, they'll assess their lives, and they'll realize that they've been spending half their lives watching American Idol and Monday Night Football, and they're going to realize, holy crap, I've been spending my life doing ridiculous stuff that means nothing. And so it's a shock, and maybe for a lot of people that will be the shock that they need to become a little more thoughtful and introspective and try truly to expand their consciousness, their understanding of who they are in the universe. I would like to see that, and I think that's a real possibility. But, all of that stuff takes work. It's like we're all sleeping, all of us at some point during the day. We kind of go on autopilot. Some of us wake up a little more than others. And we need, I think, as a society to wake up quite a bit more, and maybe disclosure will be something that sparks that. We need it.
Well, and that's only making the, not even assumption, because this is unsaid, that they are nice and kind. There's the whole thing about the reptilians, and they're in charge of the planet, and they got the Illuminati carrying out all of their will. And it's like, well, what if that's the real agenda? And it's like, okay, they disclose, but it's really the reptilians running the show, and we really don't have much to say in the matter. That's a whole other scenario.
Well, it is, but here's now, we dealt with this to some degree. I didn't, the whole scenario of if it's reptilians running the show. I really didn't.
I was just
didn't want to go there
as an example.
But it's a good example. Like, let's say it's the worst case scenario. So, like, obviously there's some international elite that is managing our globe. Anyone can see that. Let's say that they are a truly evil, manipulative elite that has worked in some connection with these reptilians or some other ET group that's really pulling all the strings. So let's say that's the case. So I think once there's a disclosure, there certainly will be a struggle by those elites they'll keep trying to put the brakes on disclosure. And the question is, will they be able to? Will they be able to? They may continue to lie, of course they will. But the difference is that with this topic now out and available for public discourse without ridicule, it seems to me it's going to be a lot more difficult to stop all of the truth from coming out at some point. So when it comes out, if it turns out, or if we decide that, yes, there are evil, truly evil reptilians that are managing the human elite, well, guess what? That's a good thing that we learn this, because it's only by learning the truth that we will ever have an opportunity to overcome that reality. And we're going to have to fight. It's not going to be fun. People will get hurt. People will get killed, obviously, if that takes a revolution, a war, whatever. But at least we'll have known the truth. And that's the bottom line. We can't progress in our consciousness or as a society without knowing what is true. So whatever the truth is, no matter how good or how upsetting it is, it seems to me anyway, we're only harming ourselves by holding back our growth, by hiding the truth from ourselves. We've got to know the truth, whatever it is.
I mean, it does seem fairly evident, other than the reptilian idea, that if we have been visited for all of these years, their intention isn't to land and take over the planet, or like on Alien Nation where they came and colonized. They're because they would have had lots of opportunities to do that.
It's a long-term thing. It's a long-term thing. Now, I mean, one of the possibilities is, are they creating a kind of a hybrid species? I do believe the answer to that is yes. I think that there are alien and human hybrids, and increasingly that look more and more human. So I think that's part of it. Although I would say, I would agree with some of the more experienced abduction researchers, which is if you ever meet someone who says to you they're an alien hybrid, that's a pretty sure sign that they're not. True alien hybrids, I think, are absolutely not interested in outing themselves at all. But I think they're out there. They do exist. And so if they do, that's going to complicate our post-disclosure politics for sure. And gosh, where was I going? My brain just went. My brain went into a little circle. I can't remember what I was about to say. It just made me laugh
because they would be true illegal aliens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've been asking really, really insightful questions during this chat. I've really been enjoying this. I remain optimistic that in the long run, the very long run, let's give it another 50, 100 years, truth will out, as they say. And I don't think there's any stopping this. We as a society, as a culture, are just moving ahead too rapidly. It's like, the old story of the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike trying to keep the water out. Well, we are the water. Our society, us, we the people are the water. We're pressing this wall of secrecy down, and it's becoming greater and greater every year. And the point will arrive when it is an undeniable flood of truth. It will happen. And we're going to have to duke it out, as it were, as a society. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of that, who these other beings are. We're going to have to debate and hopefully learn all of these things. Disclosure will not immediately answer a whole lot, actually. All it's going to do is allow this topic to be openly discussed, because we'll know that there's some truth to it. And the issue as a society will be trying to find that truth.
But one direct and immediate impact with disclosure is that it will change our place in the universe forever. We will not be the only planet in the entire universe possible of sustaining life anymore. Sorry, I'm being a little sarcastic there. But that whole mentality that the Earth is the center of the universe and the planets revolve around that. I mean, it took a long time for people to wrap their mind around, well, no, it's really the sun. And now we're kind of going, well, I guess there could be other planets that have bacteria on them.
Yeah, exactly.
But it would totally change that whole mental part.
Yeah. It'll cause a real intellectual revolution, or really a series of intellectual revolutions that I think will be wonderful. They will open up new vistas of thought in all of our areas of intellectual endeavor. Writing and art, musical creation, all of that will be affected, as well as our sciences and philosophy. All of this is going to become wide open, and we're going to see a whole new era of massively powerful exploration of the world of ideas. I think that will be a good thing. And then there'll be, the other big thing, I want to make sure I mention this, will be economic, financial, and in terms of energy. Here's I think maybe the core of the UFO secret might just be in the realm of energy. Because any 10-year-old looking at a UFO report or reading a UFO report can probably realize that these objects are not using gasoline or jet fuel to go from point A to point B. They're not using a fossil fuel. They're using something different. Whatever that something different is going to implicitly and very quickly, I think, overtake our petroleum industry, which is still probably the world's largest industry. I mean, if you group all of the peripheral subsidiary industries together, petroleum is probably the world's largest business. And disclosure will threaten that, and it will cause a lot of financial upheavals, which will, in the short run, I think, be very unpleasant. Although in the long run, I think we all realize we need to move away from petroleum as our source of fuel.
It makes me sad as you're talking about this that people like Gene Roddenberry have passed because, in his mind, he has far surpassed this challenge in life, and this challenge in the development of humanity. And it just seems like he would be like this really great resource to go, well, how would Starfleet handle this?
It's funny. You think about some of the most influential people of the 20th century, and he has to be one of them when you really think of it, because what Gene Roddenberry has done is he has given much of humanity, maybe most of humanity, its implicit vision of the future. I mean, really, when you think, when all of us fantasize into, like, what will we be like 300 years from now? I think a lot of people think of like a Star Trek type of future, where we've got the starships and we're out there and we're interacting with other races and we're trying to get along with them. That's Gene Roddenberry's vision, and I think he bequeaths us a very wonderful gift. Actually, it is a hope that in our own future we can achieve a type of intelligent, mature exploration of the universe in a way that doesn't allow us, pillaging and destroying and extracting and just, wrecking indigenous cultures like Western explorers are so good at doing, on Earth. And I think that's a great gift that he's bequeathed to us, actually.
Mhm. But when you sit there and think about, making like first contact with, an unknown species, an unknown race, and you can send in the politicians, or you could send somebody like Gene Roddenberry or the Dalai Lama or somebody that can, that has a soul.
Yes, totally.
Sorry.
These would be way better than our political leaders, than any political leader I could think of. Than any single one. Yeah, Dalai Lama, yes. I think I'd like to think that most of humanity would be very happy with the choice of the Dalai Lama to make first contact. I think he'd be great. He's someone that you could trust, most likely.
But I don't know that he would be on a lot of people's list. I mean, he's totally on the top of my list. But, those politicians.
No, exactly.
That's the whole thing. You run into their resistance and their desire to keep control over everything.
Right. Well, you're touching on something that's really critical, which is our own future as a species. What kind of species are we going to be in a post-disclosure world? In other words, are we really going to evolve? Are we really going to step up and become something, better than what we have been? Are we going to be something that doesn't engage in the daily, worldwide brutality against ourselves, against those who are weak, against those who can't defend themselves? Because this is what humanity does every single day, every day. And can we ever get to a point where those humans who have inordinate power don't abuse it and don't simply use that power to gain, riches beyond the dreams of avarice, which typically they do when they have a chance? So if we can get beyond that, I think that we've got a really great chance to do well as we go out in the universe. As it is right now, our collective consciousness as a species hasn't really inspired me with a whole lot of hope. But I do think that everything is in flux, and that includes us. We ourselves might, given the right circumstances, continue to evolve, and I don't really see yet how our species would evolve in a way that's less rapacious, less violent. But I haven't yet seen how we could evolve to a point where we don't have an economy and where we don't use resources. If we can get to a point where we don't extract resources, where we don't need that, then maybe we can get to a point where we become more mature as a species and learn truly to love all life.
And I'm sure you've heard the whole 2012 talk, and I don't want to get into any kind of discussion about 2012, but there's that whole group that is saying, we're going through this period of transformation, and,
right.
And I'm going to say maturity, and it would be nice if, with the upheaval that would happen, in my opinion, after disclosure, that the concepts of, creating a more harmonious planet that is coming through with the whole 2012 energy would all happen together, that, we create at a higher level in a better, bigger place.
Well, I would like for that to be true, but at the risk of, I don't want to hurt anyone, pop any bubbles or hurt anyone's illusions, but I do think that's an illusory belief. Now, again, I do believe that we are going through a kind of transition as a species, but I'm deeply skeptical that when we often hear about like an ascension for 2012, ascending to a higher density or higher level of consciousness, I don't believe this. I think that it's a distraction actually from what we really ought to be focusing on, and I tend to think of it as a bit escapist. That's my opinion. I don't see spirituality as something that evolves by essentially the flipping of a cosmic switch. To me, anyway, personally, spirituality, I didn't want to sound flippant there, but that's really how I see it. Spirituality is something that you have to work at. You work at it. And you're, as in Zen, the idea is you're like polishing the mirror. In other words, there's always defects in the mirror, and you work at it again and again. It's all about negation of ego. To me, that's how I look at spirituality.
And we only have a second here before the music's going to come up. I do believe that sometimes we get the biggest, fattest kick in the butt, and that can send us sailing along because we lose everything and we have nothing, we're forced to change. You know, and so sometimes we can have a huge spiritual advancement because of that.
Through suffering.
Which is the part that scares me.
Yeah, growth through suffering, sad but true, but that's just how it often is for us.
Yeah. Anyway, Richard, the music's going to come up in a second. Wonderful conversation. Love having you on.
I enjoyed it tremendously. Great
book, too. I mean, it's good. All good.
I enjoyed writing.
Website, keyholepublishing.com. If people want the book, Amazon, bookstore, regular outlets.
That's it. AD After Disclosure. You can Google that thing. Keyhole Publishing is my site, and there are links all over for AD After Disclosure. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard, and we will talk again soon.
Look forward to it, Rita. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
That was Richard Dolan. His book, AD After Disclosure. His website is Keyhole Publishing. He also has a web page for the book, www.afterdisclosure.com. Next week, we have a good friend of the show, Marie Jones. She's talking about time travel, but the show is called This Show is from the Future. Also, Cynthia Sue Larson talking about when consciousness changes the world. So until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www.justenergyradio.com for more show information and to contact Dr. Rita.